Good evening. So here I'll read this essay, The Night Owl by N. Fadiman, and make comments. So first of all, let's talk about what kind of essay this is. So this is a familiar essay. The genre of this essay is known as familiar essay, and it was published in a book titled At Large and at Small, Familiar Essays. And familiar essays by Fadiman, they remind us about the writings by Charles Lamb. And the characteristic of familiar essays is that these essays pay attention to personal experience. As you can see in this essay, Fadiman talks about sleep, habit of sleeping and waking up, which is a personal experience. And Fadiman shares this personal experience in the context of literary and historical comparison. You will find that Fadiman brings a number of literary references about different people's sleeping habits. And Fadiman also brings historical references about different people's sleeping habits. So personal essay is a type of essay which pays attention to personal experience, and this personal experience is shared in literary context with historical comparison. Okay. So Fadiman, who was born on August 7, 1953, she was an American essayist, a reporter, a literary journalist who wrote essays, memoir, as well as autobiography. She is the daughter of famous literary radio and television personality Clifton Fadiman, the father, and Annalie Jacobi Fadiman, the mother. So let's move ahead and talk further about the genre of this essay. So as I told earlier, the familiar essay has the characteristic of intellectual breadth. The content of the essay will be highly intellectual, as you can see in the essay, we'll check. And familiar essay gives minute detail of everyday experience. Here, Fadiman gives minute detail about the everyday experience of sleeping. And her essay combines humor and erudition. Erudition is show of wisdom. So Fadiman often writes about her personal obsessions. For example, she writes about her childhood enthusiasm for catching butterflies. In another essay, she writes about her crush on the essayist Charles Lamb. In another essay, she writes about her wistfulness for days of letter writing. In another essay, she writes about the challenges and rewards for moving from city to the country. So, whatever topic Fadiman picks up, she gets completely devoted to the subject and writes on the subject. For example, in the essay, The Night Owl, Fadiman stays up till late at night, till dawn, and she writes about being a night owl. In her essay, she examines the rhythms of our circadian clocks. In a while, I'll explain what is circadian clock. And she talks about the cure of insomnia that her father applied, like word games and Lewis Carroll's mathematical puzzles. So let's begin from the first paragraph. So as you can see, what I've highlighted, she begins by talking about the bed in which she and her husband sleep. And right in the first sentence, she introduces the idea of sleep, as you can see. The paragraph is remarkable for vivid imagery, the imagery of white wooden bed, the headpost, two birds, the middle arc, which has brown of back, yellow of breast, a black pectoral V that looks like the neck of a tennis sweater. Then there is the snowy owl carving, which has frowsy feathers with tassellation of white and black color. As you can see, Fadiman also uses Latin names for these two birds, Sternella magna and Nictia scandiaca. What does she try to do with this Latin name? Maybe she's trying to show that she has all this knowledge. She's erudition, as I said earlier, show of wisdom, knowledge. So, let me read the Nepali translation. As I prepare for your class, I meticulously translate each paragraph. I won't read the Nepali translation. I don't like reading, but you can pause my video and you can read. So she introduces the subject of sleep with vivid imagery. Another remarkable thing in first paragraph is the symbolism of the owl and the lark. So you know that owl is known for wisdom, and Fadiman shows her wisdom in this essay. Owl is known for hunting ability. Fadiman also shows her ability to hunt beautiful words and create beautiful essay. Owls are known for hooting call, giving hooting call at night. Her essay, The Night Owl, itself sounds like a hooting call because it keeps us woken up at night as we read. This essay is like a hooting call, a beautiful call, full of wisdom. Owls are famous for curiosity, and Fadiman shows extreme curiosity in this essay, as you can see. She shows curiosity so much that she can write beautiful essay on an ordinary topic like sleep. Owls have nocturnal nature. Fadiman or the rater also has nocturnal nature. She wakes up through night. Right. Another thing, Changrili's essay, Coming Home Again, opens with a paragraph in narrative mode, whereas Fadiman's essay, The Night Owl, begins with a paragraph written in descriptive mode with beautiful adjectives that create vivid visual imagery. Now, the lark also has symbolic meaning. The lark symbolizes joy, hope, laughter. Larks are famous for beginning the day with a beautiful song. Larks start singing right with the sunrise. In Western culture, larks are seen as birds who bring joy and hope. They are also associated with music, art, and playfulness. Now on my screen, you can see the picture of a lark. Look how beautiful this is. She compares her husband with the lark. Look, the brown of back and yellow of the breast, and the streak V-shaped like table tennis sweater neck. And here is the snowy owl, you can see. Now in paragraph 2, she begins her paragraph with the expression alas. Pay attention. So this expression alas expresses sadness and regret. It gives the message that there is no hope that a situation will change. And as you go and read, you find that Fadiman says that once you are an owl, you are always an owl. You cannot change. Once you are a lark, you are always a lark. You cannot change the habit of sleeping and waking up. Her husband sleeps at night, wakes up during day. She wakes up during night, sleeps during day. So she says that we cannot change our situation. There is no hope. But we have to accept as we are. So the word alas is remarkable paragraph 2 because it conveys a sense of disappointment and sorrow. Another remarkable word in this paragraph number 2 is circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythms are 24-hour cycles. They are part of body's internal clock. They run in the background as we keep doing our work. Right. The most important circadian rhythm is sleep-wake-up cycle. It is that clock that decides when you sleep and when you wake up. It's 8 o'clock as I'm preparing this video. And around 2 o'clock or around 10 o'clock, I'll feel sleepy. My circadian clock is set to 10 p.m. for sleeping and 3 a.m. for waking up. Right. So this is a master clock in the brain. And what the writer is arguing is that when you sleep, when you wake up, is determined by that circadian rhythm or circadian biological clock in your mind. Then this second paragraph is also remarkable for some idioms. The writer shows that she is a very resourceful writer. Look at idioms. She uses the word idiom to move as if through honey. So this idiom to move as if through honey suggests a slow, sticky and heavy movement just as the honey flows. And this idiom describes a situation where progress or movement is slow, laborious, and impeded. Then you have another idiom in the same paragraph, number 2, to pour salt in the coffee. This is an idiomatic expression which means to do something that ruins or spoils a good thing. So, in a sense, when she keeps waking up at night, maybe it spoils their conjugal happiness. Okay. Then we move to paragraph 3. The remarkable thing that happens in paragraph 3 is that the writer brings a historical reference of Endosthenes, a scribe, a writer who accompanied Alexander the Great to India. And Endosthenes observed that the tamarind tree, imili tree, opens its leaves during the day and folds them at night. So Endosthenes wrote that maybe the tamarind trees worship the sun. So what is the writer doing? The writer is showing that the circadian rhythm is not only about human beings. Even the trees have circadian rhythm, like the tamarind tree, wakes up during day and sleeps at night. Then the writer brings a second reference of the Swedish taxonomist Carlos Linnaeus. In a note copy, make a column and note down all these references. We have a scientific authority now. And this scientist, taxonomist, he designed a flower clock that was a circular garden with 12 wedge-shaped flower bed of flowers, where there were different species of plants whose petals opened at a different hour. For example, the white water lily bloomed at 6 a.m. in the morning, and the evening primrose bloomed at 6 p.m. evening. So the writer is showing again that even in flowers, the flowers have circadian rhythm that functions with the help of their petals. Then she says that in humans, the circadian clock is centered in the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Look, what a minute knowledge she shows. The writer shows that she has medical knowledge, biological knowledge. Look, the name she uses, technical word, suprachiasmatic nucleus, a freckle-sized, sickle-shaped cluster of nerve cells in the hypothalamus. See all the vocabulary. I told you, familiar essays pick up ordinary topics and they treat them as if they were serious issues. So she says that this hypothalamus is activated by proteins produced by genes all over the body. And what is his meaning? She's saying that when we sleep and when we wake up is genetic, right? And she says that scientists at Cornell, now look, another reference, is scholarly authority, reset human biological clock, doing an experiment. Now, on my screen, you can see I've highlighted these words here. Let me show here. This part that highlight, this is the central claim of the essay. This is the major claim of the essay. This is the thesis statement of the essay. And all 22, 23 paragraphs of this essay, they will develop this idea. So keep this idea in the mind. This is the message of the essay. This is the speech of the writer. This is the message of the writer. This is the argument of the writer. The mechanisms for controlling, sleeping, and waking are embedded in nearly every human cell, as well as in every flower, petal, every insect antenna, every bird wing. This is the thesis statement. Now I brought a picture here for you. It's not in your book. This is the suprachiasmatic nucleus at the heart of the brain, the blue part. And inside blue you have maybe the green part, right? Look how much study the reader has done. This is hypothalamus in the brain. And she argues that our sleeping and waking habits are controlled by this organ in our brain. Okay. So in paragraph 3, the reader shows that nature also follows a pattern of time and says that humans too have biological clock in their hypothalamus just as nature. And she presents the central claim: the mechanisms for controlling sleeping and waking are embedded in every human cell, in every flower petal, every insect antenna, and in every bird wing. And then we also have references to historical figures, scientists, and university research. So when the writer brings scholarly references and shows that she is a very scholarly speaker, writer, who has a lot of knowledge, then she makes ethical appeal. Unlike Changrili, who made emotional appeal. And why does Changrili use emotional appeal? And why does Fadiman use ethical appeal? The answer lies in the container in which Changrili's Coming Home Again was published, and in the container in which N. Fadiman's essay was published. Changrili's essay Coming Home Again was published in the New Yorker, which is kind of family magazine, whereas Fadiman's essay was published in the magazine titled The American Scholar. So Changrili had average city dwellers as his audience. Fadiman has scholarly people as her audience. So what kind of appeal a writer brings is determined by what kind of audience the writer is speaking to. Changrili uses emotional appeal because his audience is average city dwellers, not necessarily scholarly people. Whereas Fadiman's essay makes ethical appeal, logical appeal, because her audience is not ordinary people but scholarly people. So who was Androsthenes of Thasos? He was one of the admirals of Alexander the Great. He sailed as a trarch with Nearchus and was also sent by Alexander down the Euphrates to explore the coast of Persian Gulf. Right. Let's move to paragraph 4. The writer begins with a scientific authority in paragraph 4. Chronobiologists. Who are they? Scientists who study the mechanism of time in plants and animals, biology. And by referring to chronobiologists, she argues that out of every 10 people, 8 follow a normal circadian cycle. Look what is academic writing. It is this writer who is saying out of every 10 people, 8 follow a normal circadian clock. But how is she saying? She is saying this statement with the backup of a chronobiologist reference. Look, one of them is lark, the other is an owl. And then she writes that the settings of when you wake up and sleep, they are genetically encoded and cannot be erased. Look at her argument. She is arguing that, hello larks, even if you are not happy with me, there is nothing I can do, nothing you can do, because my habit of waking up through night is not my ill intention. Rather, it is genetic feature. And your habit of sleeping during night is not your intention. It's your feature. Right. Then she writes in the same third paragraph, once an owl, always an owl. Such sentences are aphoristic. What is aphorism? An aphorism is a plain, simple statement that seems to contain a lot of wisdom in it. The sentence seems simple, plain, but if we pay attention, it contains a lot of wisdom. Once an owl, always an owl. Then she writes, Wills Webb, a psychologist at the University of Florida. Look, another reference she brings, a psychologist from the University of Florida. What is this letter showing? This letter is showing that she has done a lot of study on this subject. She has collected a lot of information on the subject, and she has collected not ordinary information, but scholarly sources like university professor of psychology who spent 5 years trying to teach rats not to sleep between noon and 6 p.m. Then she brings a quotation. This is another feature of academic writing. Writers quote scholars, sources. They, by their contrary nature, he told Lynn Lamberg, an expert on sleep patterns. Like she's referring a conversation between Wills Webb and Lynn Lamberg. They, by their contrary nature, spent 5 years teaching me otherwise. See the humor. In a familiar essay, the writer picks up a topic and discusses the topic in a very humorous way. And look here, this humor, where the scientists say that he was trying to change the habit of mice and the mice change his habit. Then she writes, I would wager bet my softest down pillow that the Cornell scientist who thought up the light on the backs of the knees experiment was an owl. She mentions this experiment in the previous paragraph, where she's saying that the scientist put light on the back of the knees and tried to reset the circadian clock in an experiment. And she says that even the scientist was an owl. Look what she's doing. She's saying that I'm not a single owl. There are thousands like me. So I'm not abnormal. I'm normal. Then she writes, at 8 a.m., could any biologist dream up something so lunatic, so surreal, so redolent of the punchy wee hours? Wee hour means early hour, early morning, and so incompatible with the rational light of morning. So in paragraph 4, the writer brings scientific evidence, and the writer makes logical appeal. She claims that sleeping waking is genetic, as she brings a psychologist, a taxonomist, and others to support her claim. And when she makes good logical appeal, she makes ethical appeal. When a rhetor can reason well, can reason properly, then we start believing the rhetor, and it also has ethical appeal. So understand that logical appeal and ethical appeal go hand in hand. Okay, let's move to paragraph 5. Now in paragraph 5, the rhetor brings another literary reference. Cyril Connolly, who was an English literary critic and writer, born 1993, died 1974. And she quotes Cyril Connolly saying that the shades of evening scatter their purple through my prose. So she brings Cyril Connolly, who had the habit of writing at night. Then why not write in the morning? Unfortunately, in my case, there is never very much of the morning, and it is curious that although I do not despise people who go to bed earlier than I, almost everyone is impatient with me for not getting up. So she says, I'm not complaining the larks. So why do the larks complain against me? Then she writes, Connolly put his finger on the human owl's perennial problem. The natural world discovered the benefits of shift work. What is shift work? Work comprising recurring periods in which different groups of workers do the same jobs in relay. For example, I work in a private college as a guest teacher in the morning, and I work at university as a permanent lecturer during day. Look my shift. I work 2 shifts. I have been working 2 shifts for the last 30 years, almost 28 years. Then she writes, no one faults the bandicoot. Who is a bandicoot? Insectivorous, native to Australia and New Guinea. No one faults the bandicoot. No one complains bandicoot for prowling after dusk. No one scolds the night flying Cecropia moth for its decadence. No one calls the whippoorwill a lazy slugabed for sleeping by day and singing by night. But people who were born to follow similar rhythms are viewed by the other 9/10 to the population as tad threadbare in the moral fiber department. She says that you don't complain a bandicoot, you don't complain the Cecropia, you don't complain the whippoorwill, then why do you complain me? Look, she's saying that nature has a lot of creatures which are like owls. So in para 5, she argues that shift work has benefits. And she compares her working at night as shift work because shift work is easier to share, makes it easier to share given territory. When she reads at night, nobody is waking there or everybody is sleeping, so she is not disturbed. And she says that she is not a deviant. People should not complain against her. She is a normal woman. Paragraph 6. She writes, those who would bring great things to pass. She is quoting 18th century theologian Matthew Henry. Look, every other reference is unique. She never quotes the same reference twice. Now we have theologian Matthew Henry. What did Matthew Henry write? Those who would bring great things to pass must rise early. In the medieval Benedictine horarium means time. You see, her diction is remarkable in this essay. She intentionally, knowingly writes Latin expressions, archaic words, and this is part of her style. In the medieval Benedictine horarium, the first of the monks' 7 daily offices was observed at 3:15 a.m. Me, better to get a corner on virtue before anyone else could put in a competing bid. Another remarkable thing in this essay, you will see the writer uses phrases and idioms. Like here you have one phrase, better to get a corner. Better to get a corner means to be the only company, organization, etc. that has a particular product, ability, advantage. Okay. So if you feel difficult with the English, you can read my Nepali. I won't read the Nepali, but I'll advise you not to read Nepali. I did this translation just to make sure I understand every single sentence. And at 4:30 she writes, AM, is it any surprise that in 1660 one would have found John Milton? Look, another reference he brings, literary reference. Lustrous, having lustrous signing with matutinal rectitude. What is matutinal? Occurring in the morning. Listening to a servant read aloud from the Hebrew Bible. Milton had lost his eyesight because of his excessive reading during night, and he appointed people to read for him. While in 18, look, she's bringing, what is this writer doing? This writer is showing that great people like John Milton were owls. While in 1890, one would have found the Irish journalist, another reference, a pornographer. Who is a pornographer? Person who sells, produces films, photographs, or writes pornography. She refers Frank Harris, a journalist from Ireland. On the rare nights when he was sleeping alone, finally nodding off after a night of unspeakable debauchery. What is debauchery? Debauchery is having sex throughout night. So she brings another reference of Frank Harris. So in paragraph 6, she brings further evidences to argue that it is not only her who wakes up throughout the night, but there have been other famous people who kept awake throughout the night. She brings theological evidences, literary evidences, evidences from the journalism, and all these evidences make logical appeal because her reasoning is so convincing, because she's bringing evidences from scholarly people. She makes a claim and then supports the claim with the evidences and makes logical reasoning. And when the writer makes good logical reasoning, it naturally creates ethical appeal. Those who are logical also seem to be ethical. Let's move to paragraph 7. She writes, the owl's reputation may be beyond salvation. Who gets up early? Now, she is bringing examples of how the owl is negatively notorious, negative stereotypes. Who gets up early? Farmers get up early, bakers get up early, doctors get up early. Okay, so you see, all good people get up early. Now, who stays up late? Muggers, street walkers. See, now the writer brings all negative stereotypes about the owl people, and she's showing that we have done injustice about the owls by portraying them in a very negative way, like muggers, street walkers, cat burglars. It is assumed that if you are sneaking around after midnight, you must have something to hide. Night is a time of goblins. It is time of ghouls, vampires. You can read meanings in bracket. Zombies, witches, warlocks, demons, rats, fiends, banshees, poltergeists, werefolk, boogeymen, and things that go bump, that make noise. It is also time for fairies and angels, but nobody talks about fairies and angels, he says. The nightmare trumps, who are nightmare trump, outrank or defeat someone or something, often in a highly public way. The nightmare trumps the pleasant dream. Night like winter is a metaphor for death, she writes. Look, earlier we read that the owl symbolizes death. The night is a metaphor for death. One does not say the dead of morning or the dead of spring. In a strange and tenebrous book called Night, look, she's referring a book called Night, which every lark should be forced to read, preferably by moonlight. Look the humor. She says we should force the larks to read this book at moonlight. The British critic, who wrote this book? The British critic A. Alvarez, who was an owl. Look, Milton was an owl. Alvarez was an owl. Points out glumly, in a sad way, that Christ is known as the light of the world and Satan is known as the prince of darkness. So look, this writer is contrasting herself against Christ and she is comparing herself with Satan. Look, she is comparing herself with the God. With such a powerful prologue tradition arrayed against us. Look, this us is very important because it tells about the writer. So who is the writer? The writer is an owl. And this owl is speaking on behalf of all the owls. Must we owls be forever condemned to the infernal regions, which despite their inextinguishable flames are always described as dark? This is a rhetorical question, meaning no. Then next paragraph she writes, I have tried hard to understand the lark's perspective. Campbell Gaislin, the artist who carved our bedpost finials. Now here tells, in 8th paragraph, she tells who carved the birds in the bedpost. It is Campbell Gaislin, the artist who carved the pictures. Retires at 9 and rises at 5. So she says, even Campbell Gaislin is an owl. I have gotten up early ever since, no. Retires at 9 and rises at 5. I have gotten, look, she quotes Campbell Gaislin. I have gotten up early ever since I was a boy in West Texas. He told me he would look out of the window at dawn and the sky would stay on forever. It was a special creamy color at that hour before the clouds came. It was the only time when it was cool. The morning was clean and blank and full of promise, like a piece of paper. See the simile. See the simile, figure of speech. No one had written on yet. Morning was like a piece of paper on which no one written anything. I could not wait to jump out of the bed and invent something. A car, an aeroplane, a vacuum cleaner made from a spice can. By sunset, the day was used up, exhausted. Night was a time of disappointment. Who said this? Campbell said this. Night was a time of disappointment when you thought about all the things you had hoped to do and had not been able to do. There is nothing as sad and lonely as the bark of a coyote at night somewhere off in the West Texas night, and the moon hanging outside your window as bone white as an old cow skull. See this simile and this imagery of old cow skull. Here is a very interesting Nepali translation I did. I won't read, but you can read slowly and you can enjoy this translation I did. So in paragraph 7, Fadiman talks about the negative stereotyping associated with those people who stay awake throughout the night. She says that night is also time for fairies and angels, but nobody thinks about these positive images of fairies and angels. She says that our culture supports larks and condemns night owls, and this is injustice. Paragraph 8. That is persuasive testimony, but it's not going to make me jump out of. That is persuasive testimony. She's referring to paragraph 7. She's referring to what Campbell Gosselin said about sleeping at night and waking up in the morning. That's persuasive testimony, but it's not going to make me jump out of bed at 5 anymore than a panegyric by a white water lily on the splendors of the morning is going to make the evening primrose transplant itself in Aeneas's 6 a.m. flower bed. So she says that just as the morning flower, if talks to the evening flower will not come to the morning flower's bed. Whatever the writer says won't change my habit. Then she writes, my suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain, is stuck in the owl position and nothing can change. And there is nothing I can do about it. Dawns are all very well, though I generally see them after staying up all night when I may be too sleepy to appreciate them. But they cannot hold a candle to a full moon. Dawns may be beautiful, but you cannot hold candle full moon and aurora borealis. Look, she uses a lot of Latin words. A meteor shower or a comet that you can see at night. So in paragraph 8, she argues that she is genetically set to wake up at night and she cannot do anything about it. So I'm pausing here for a while. I need a short break and I'll be back in a while and continue recording. So I'm back. I took a break, short break. We were reading paragraph 8, where she argues that the owls are genetically set to wake up at night and the larks are genetically set up to sleep at night. Let's move to paragraph 9. She writes, in March of 1986, do you remember I said that familiar essays pick up a topic based on personal experience and they treat the topic with historical comparison. Now, do you see? Time and again, this writer brings historical references all the way from Alexander the Great to the 19th century, 20th century. In March of 1986, I was climbing with a friend. Now she tells a story. Climbing with a friend on the Tasman Glacier in New Zealand, it occurred to us that if we got up at 1 a.m. midnight and walked northeast across the glacier, we might be able to see Halley's Comet, which was making its every 76th year swing that month and could be best viewed, or so we had read, from the southern hemisphere. For my larkish companion, 1 a.m. night was an early start. For me, it was simply an excuse to postpone my bedtime. We left the Tasman saddle promptly at 1, roped up, and put on our crampons in what seemed at first like pitch darkness, but soon, once our eyes grew accustomed to the light of thousands of stars reflected on the shimmering glacier, seemed more like dusk. After crunching a mile or so across the clean, hard snow, look, the auditory image. As you walk in the snow, you have this crunching sound, which had been unpleasantly slushy in the afternoon sun. We stopped on a narrow col with a 1,000-foot drop off on either side. And there it was, a small white cornucopia above the northern horizon, not solid, but delicately stippled, as if produced by a heavenly dot matrixed printer. You will see Again and again, Fadiman uses similes. Here you see as if produced by a heavenly dot matrix printer. She is comparing the moon or star with this image. We spread our sleeping bags, she writes, on the snow and crawled inside. The vantage point was dizzying. It was impossible to tell whether the comet was above us or we were above the comet. We were all falling through space, missing the stars by inches. So, what does it do in paragraph 9? The writer narrates her experience of climbing a glacier at midnight and shows that sometimes working at night is advantageous. So, do you see in paragraph 9, the reader shows that night is not only about bad things and bad people. You can do great things like watching the Halley comet at night. Paragraph 10. Surely the best thing about camping is the night. Night is what differentiates a camping trip from a series of day hike. There are few greater pleasures than stretching out in your tent, inside which a glowing candle lantern makes your muddy boots and damp wool socks look as if they were painted by Georges de la Tour, French Baroque painter. Pay attention that every paragraph is remarkable description. Changrili uses narrative mode of writing and Fadiman uses descriptive mode of writing. And she writes, and glimpsing through the open flap, the corner of a constellation that is invisible from your hometown. Look, she says that you cannot see the star from your home, but I could see the star because I'm a being an owl. I was climbing the mountain at night. Look, she's telling to the larks that larks, I can do something you cannot do. Since I live in New York City, that includes just about everything, even the Big Dipper. There are sounds you wouldn't hear at home. Look, she again says that if you're an owl, you can enjoy certain sounds like crickets make sound at night. Larks cannot listen to them. Owls can. Cicadas make sound at night. Tree frogs make sounds at night. Water ducks, loons make sound at night. They're all owls, he says. Even on a memorable Catskills backpacking trip in my husband's youth, the urgent rustles of copulating porcupine. Oh God, what a funny thing. She says if you walk at night, you can listen to porcupines mating, having sex. The contrast between the infinite space outside the tent and the cozily delimited interior inside the tent, whose little zippers and pouches for glasses, handkerchiefs, pocket knives. So, do you see the detailed description? Why do you think this writer is giving all this detail? One reason maybe she is giving the impression that she is very learned writer. This is the example of erudition. From a miniature simulation of a well-ordered pantry inside the tent, nudges my memory back to the houses I used to make in my childhood by suspending a blanket over a table. Now inside when she is inside the tent on the mountain waiting for the comet, she remembers that incident, and while remembering her visit to the mountain, she remembers her childhood, nostalgia, flashback, like Changrili. Dragging in a tray of cocoa and cookies and creating a private domestic zone in which the temperature was always warm and the light was always crepuscular. Hell may be a dark place, but so is the womb. Look, this is another aphoristic statement. One characteristic of this writer is she time and again makes aphoristic statements. An aphoristic statement is a simple statement that seems to contain grain of wisdom. Hell may be a dark place, but so is the womb. So what is the feature of womb? Womb is dark, but it creates something. Night is dark, but it creates something. What does the night create here? The night creates a beautiful essay we are reading. So in paragraph 10, the writer talks about the pleasures of camping at night. And this paragraph, as I said earlier, is remarkable for description and imagination. Paragraph 11. My husband inherited his larkishness. Look, she said it's genetic. Along with his Roman nose and his shaggy eyebrows from his father. Who would feel he had committed an act of irreparable sloth if he slept past 4:30? So she says that her husband's father, her father-in-law, woke up around 4:30. Therefore, her husband George also wakes up around 4:30. I inherited my owlishness from a father who shares Jimmy Walker's conviction that it is a sin to go to bed on the same day you get up. Look the humor. Who said this? Jimmy Walker. Who was Jimmy Walker? Mayor of New York City between 1926 and 1932. Look how much information she's bringing. Even if he retires at 2 a.m., my father cannot fall asleep without at least an hour of rigorous mental game. Now look the humor. Her father practiced mental games to bring sleep. He is the sort of person who could never get drowsy counting sheep. See the humor. He once told me that he just got wider and wider awake as the numbers mounted. He was counting sleep. He was counting sheep to sleep. But as the number of sheep increased, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 1 million, 1 trillion, then he could not sleep to make sure that he was counting accurately. See the fun. See the irony and fun, humor. He once told me that he just got wider and wider awake as the numbers mounted, since he had to make sure he was counting correctly. Humor. So we see humor. He composes puns. His father composes puns, limericks, clarihues, palindromes, anagrams, alphabetical lists of various kinds. In the introduction, I told you that a familiar essay discusses a personal experience in literary context. And here is the example. She talks about puns, limericks, all these are genres of literature. What are they? What is a pun? Pun is that has double meaning. What is limerick? A funny statement. What is clarihues? Again, funny statement. See I brought the Nepali translation of these words from dictionaries. She writes, an example of the last of these genres. Last means which one? Anagram. An example of the last of these genres, excluding the refractory X, which was long ago thrown out of the game, proceed through the alphabet from A to Z, finding words that end with the letters EL. So you get the words like Abel, Babel, AB. Abel, Babel, Channel, Diesel, Edel, Feedle, Godel. See the fun. See the humor. Our father counted like this to, to, to invite sleep. And he could not sleep. Okay. Then she writes, the sailing was reasonably clear until my father got to G, a perennial troublemaker. It took an hour from 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. to come up with the name of a fellow reviewer at the Nation whom he had last seen 60 years earlier, Morton Dowen Jabel. Abel, Babel, Channel, Diesel, Idle, Fiddle, Goodle, Jebel. My father says that at the moment Mr. Jebel shiddled into his consciousness, he was suffused with a sense of transcendent completion greater than he had ever felt on signing a book contract or closing a deal. See the humor. So in paragraph 11, the reader argues that sleep patterns are inherited genetically from parents like any other physical features. Let's move on to paragraph 12. Insomnia need not be disagreeable. When any Prox, who was any Prox, American novelist, short story writer, look, another literary figure, can't sleep, she puts on Quebec reels. What is Quebec reel? A type of traditional music. And dances around for half an hour in her bunny slippers. See the humor. Until the fantasy wore thin with repetition. F. Scott Fitzgerald, American novelist, quarterbacked the Princeton's team to hundreds of nocturnal victories over Yale. Lewis Carroll, like my father, posed himself problems. Look here, example. Question. If 70% of a group of pensioners have lost an eye, 75% of pensioners have lost an ear, 80% of the pensioners have lost an arm, 85% have lost a leg. What percentage at least must have lost all the four? Oh God, what a typical mathematics. I wish I had a mathematician to answer me. Answer 10. Oh God, how? Adding the wounds together, we get 70 plus 75 plus 80 plus 85 is equal to 310 among 100 men, which gives 3 to each and 4 to 10 men. Therefore, the least percentage is 10. It is this mathematics to bring sleep. Not everyone's cup of somnifacient. Look the term, she uses vocabulary, very scholarly vocabulary. Not everyone's cup of somnifacient tea. But as Carol put it, I believe that an hour of calculation is much better for me than half an hour of worry. So in paragraph 12, the writer says that many people cannot sleep at night and it does not have to be regarded as something bad. She gives example of many famous people who could not sleep at night. Paragraph 13. I feel certain that Morton Dwayne Jabel, an American academic and literary critic, would never have paid my father an extrasensory visit during the day. What is this extrasensory visit? Oh God. Nor would Lewis Carroll have performed his amputations with such accuracy had he been operating when the rest of the world was awake. Then she writes, owls think better at night. To come to this conclusion, owls think better at night. She discusses Lewis Carroll and Morton Taven Jabel and her father. And she says that, look, my father, look, Morton Taven Jabel, look, Lewis Carroll. And you will see that owls think better at night. And she gives a proof. Look, this essay. Fadiman wrote this essay because he sat down and thought at night. It is true, she writes, however, that many people make mistakes when they stay up late. Now she says that we owls don't make mistakes at night, but you larks, when you stay up till late at night, you make mistakes. A single example, look here example. She says that many people, larks, make mistake when they try to become owl. Now example, the Exxon Valdez accident. What was that? Exxon Valdez accident was, let me find here for you. Exxon, all this. I must have information somewhere. Maybe I have in a comment. Oh, let's read. I'll find out. She writes, the Exxon Valdez. Oh, Exxon Valdez was an oil tanker owned by the Exxon Shipping Company, which ran aground at 12 a.m. So, who was running this ship? The lark, who was trying to be an owl. And an argument is that when larks try to become owl, they create problem. The pesticide tank at Bhopal ruptured at 12:40. The Chernobyl reactor exploded at 1:23. The reactor at 3 Mile Island spewed radiation at 3:15. So what does she show? She's showing that all the world famous accident happened because the larks tried to become the owls by waking up at night and working at night. These accidents were all attributable to human error, but surely the errant humans were among the non-owl 90% day folk, maybe even died in the wool larks who had been forced by the exigencies of the shift work to disobey the ticking of their circadian clock. Do you see what she's arguing? She says that if you don't follow the circadian clock, if you don't follow the circadian clock, the biological clock, you will see Exxon Valdez accident, you will see Bhopal accident, you will see Chernobyl accident. At 3 Mile Island, she writes, partial meltdown of Unit 2 nuclear reactor. The workers had just rotated to the night shift that very day and must have been as groggy as a plane full of New Yorkers disembarking in Kuala Lumpur. So please note down, Fadiman again and again uses similes like this. So in paragraph 13, the writer argues that owls think better at night, but if the larks are forced to stay up late at night, they might end up making dangerous mistakes. She gives many examples. Let's move to paragraph 14. It was therefore with a distinct sense of unease that I read Night as Frontier, a book by a Boston University sociologist named Murray Melvin. Oh God, look, another reference. Melvin believes that night, like the American West in the 19th century, look simile, is a territory to be colonized. We have run out of space. So if we wish to increase our productivity and uncrowd our cities, the only dimension we have left to occupy is time, the hours after the normal workday. Many factories have already discovered that it is cheaper to operate around the clock, even if wages are higher on the non-standard shifts. If Melbourne is right, if Melbourne is right, those factory night workers, along with locksmiths, bartenders, bail bondsmen, 24-hour gas station attendants, police officers, paramedics, security guards, taxi drivers, talk show hosts, and suicide hotline volunteers are the advanced wave of a vast nocturnal migration. So look, what she's arguing? She's arguing that the world is tending to be owls now gradually. There are many parallels between night work and the settlement of the western frontier. The pioneers tend to be young and non-conformist. The middle-aged are home watching Jay Leno. This Jay Leno was a serial like Gaijapra. The population is sparse. Authority is decentralized. Life is informal. There is hardship, fatigue, isolation, disruption of family routine, and lawlessness, parking lot mugging. So she is comparing. Do you see? The writer is comparing people who work at night, people who work at day, and she is showing the problems of people who work at night. So in para 14, the writer compares the occupation of the night time with the occupation of the western frontier in America. And she uses the rhetorical strategy of analogy here in para 14. Keep in mind, analogy. Fadiman compares the night with American frontier. This paragraph makes ethical appeal because the writer brings scholarly authority by referring to Boston University sociologist Murray Melvin. Para 15. Melvin may be right, but in my view, if the night is like the Wild West, let's leave the night that way. If too many settlers start putting down stakes in the territory beyond midnight, California is going to happen. The wide open spaces will become the Los Angeles freeway system. And with too few owls behind the wheel, there will be accidents. So she's saying that don't force larks to become owls. Because I savor the illusion of having the small hours. Small hour means early hours of morning after midnight. To myself, when I am in the city, I prefer to spend them at home. The noirish melancholy of the after hour. Look, the reference it brings to noirish films. The noirish melancholy, you can check the meaning in the bracket, I won't discuss here. The noirish melancholy of the after hours club and the all night diner suits. Students, please pay attention to detailed description. Many owls, but I would rather be in our bedroom, looking out the window every once in a while at the flocks of chick, black garbed young couples, their laughter floating upward through the night, who cross the patch of lamp light at Houston and West Broadway. Even if the city were safer, I doubt I would go for late walks. Dickens once had a period of insomnia. Now, look, I said familiar essays discuss topics in literary context. Here is an example. Dickens once had a period of insomnia during which he spent several nights walking the London streets between 12:30 and 5:30. Haymarket, Newgate Prison, Bethlehem Hospital, Westminster Bridge, Covent Garden. He was searching for comfort, but found only drunkards, thieves, rain, shadows, silence, and scudding clouds, as restless as an evil conscience in a tumbled bed. The night he described in the uncommercial traveler is not the sable goddess of Edward Young. Look, the literary context in which Fadiman discusses sleep. Or the bare bosomed, see the image, bare bosomed nurturer that Walt Whitman wishes to press him close. The night is more like the horrid place of distempered gloom of thought, see the simile, and deadly weariness of heart that James Thompson visited in the city of dreadful night. So do you see? Look how many literary references she brings. Charles Dickens she brings, Edward Young she brings, Walt Whitman she refers, James Thompson she refers. Then she writes, the most depressing of all nocturnal poems. She is referring to novels, poems. Okay. Then she writes, for Dickens, as for me, the urban night was best enjoyed indoor, preferably with a book in hand. Look, she says that we owls don't do bad things at night. We stay inside room and we read books. So in para 15, the writer makes logical appeal because she compares night with the Wild West and argues that we should leave the night pure, not disturb it, and then gives reasons why she thinks so. She brings an authority from the field of literature. She refers to Charles Dickens and argues that night is unfortunately associated with negative stereotypes. She also refers to many other literary figures like Edward Young, Walt Whitman, James Thompson, and concludes that the urban night is best enjoyed indoors, preferably with a book in hand. Let's move to paragraph 16. She writes, there is absolutely no such thing as reading but by a candle. This is aphoristic quotation from she brings from Charles Lamb. And I told you that N. Fadiman was very much impressed by Charles Lamb, and Fadiman imitated Lamb's writing style of the family essay. So she is quoting Charles Lamb. We have tried the affectation of a book at noonday in gardens and in sultry arbors, but it was labor thrown away. Lamb is saying that we read book during day and we didn't enjoy. And I'm preparing this video at 9 o'clock at night. So in my laptop you see 5:42 a.m. p.m. No, the time is not correct. The actual time is 9 o'clock. We have tried the affectation of a book at noonday in gardens and in sultry arbors, but it was labor thrown away. Those gay modes, here gay means happy, in the beam come about you, hovering and teasing like so many coquettes that will have you all to their self and are jealous of your abstractions. By the midnight taper, the writer digests his meditations. By the same light, we must approach to their perusal if we would catch the flame, the order. I would like to read this translation. Sorry for this Nepali. हामीले पुस्तकको कृत्रिमता वा स्वाङलाई मध्याहमा बगैँचाहरूमा उष्णलता कुञ्जहरूमा परीक्षण गरेका छौँ, तर हाम्रो प्रयास व्यर्थ खेर गयो। प्रकाशका किरणहरूमा चञ्चल धूल कणहरू तरुणीहरूलाई जिस्काउने पातिएका पुरुषहरू जस्तै उड्दै र तपाईँलाई जिस्काउँदै तपाईँका वरिपरि आउँछन् र तपाईँलाई आफूमा समाहित गर्न खोज्छन् र तपाईँका अमूर्तताको डागसित ह्युमर। मध्यरातमा पातलो मोमबत्ती छेउ लेखकले ध्यान गर्दछ। हामी पाठकले पनि लेखकलाई त्यही प्रकाशमा चर्चा अवलोकन वा परिशीलन गर्नुपर्दछ अनि मात्र हामीले लेखकको ज्ञान प्रकाश वा ज्ञान सुगन्ध अनुभूत गर्न सक्छौँ। What a wonderful writing. He says, I am an owl. I wrote this essay at night and I want my readers to read my essay at night. Only an owl can appreciate an owl. Only an owl can appreciate an owl. Look at the argument. Then she writes, I prefer a 150-watt halogen bulb, but I know just what he meant. Reading by day seems prosaic and businesslike, the stuff of duty rather than of pleasure. When I was 10 or 12, now nostalgia, flashback. When I was, now this is similar to Changrili. When I was 10 or 12, I would close my school books without protest at bedtimes, but after my mother left the room, I would flip the switch of my bedside lamp and snatch a stolen hour or two or three of novel reading, my heart beating wildly if I heard footsteps in the hall. Look, she used to read at throughout night, locking the room behind her mother's warning. Had my mother glimpsed the light under the door, she always had the grace to pretend she had not. Her steps would grow fainter, the book would grow shorter, and I would fall asleep at an ungodly hour, suffused with the goodies, secret pride at having sinned. So in paragraph 16, the writer brings a literary authority to support her argument that she makes at the end of the paragraph 15. In paragraph 15, the writer argues that night is the best time for reading. And in paragraph 16, she refers to Charles Lamb and quotes him saying that a writer meditates by the candlelight at night, so a reader also should read his or her book at night. Thus, Fadiman makes both ethical as well as logical appeal, whereas Changrili makes emotional appeal. After this, the writer shares a personal experience from her childhood. This anecdote makes emotional appeal through visual and auditory imagery of childhood and motherly care. Para 17. See the aphorism. The child who reads at night is likely to become the adult who writes at night. The style in this sentence is Baconian. If you read essays by Francis Bacon's writing style is objective. Francis Bacon's sentences move like soldiers, very formal, very objective, very aphoristic. Francis Bacon is famous for aphoristic writing. So here Fadiman sounds like Bacon, though most times Fadiman sounds like Charles Lamb. Please understand that Charles Lamb and Bacon are quite different kind of writers. She writes, during the day I pop out of my chair a dozen times an hour. The phone rings during day. The fax beeps during day. The mailbox needs to be checked during day. The coffee needs to be brewed during day. The letter needs to be filed during day. The post it needs to be rearranged during day. There are 1,000 things to do during day. How can the writer's distractive sirens be resisted? Who is a siren? Siren is a beautiful girl. Here in this sentence, siren means beautiful girl who sexually distracts you when you are doing something good. Oh God, see the example. How can the writer's distractive sirens be resisted? During the phase when his muse was particularly obdurate, John McAfee used to tie himself to his chair with his bathrobe sash. Look this humor. Look this humor. John McAfee tied himself to his chair. Schiller heightened his powers of concentration by inhaling the fumes from cats of rotten apple he kept in a door. Oh God, what a humor. Oh God, I never knew this thing. All I need to do is stay up past midnight. So in paragraph 17, the writer uses yet another rhetorical strategy. Fadiman makes an aphoristic statement in the very opening of paragraph 17. The use of aphorism is her rhetorical strategy in this paragraph. This aphorism serves double purpose. It not only contains wisdom, but also makes an argument on her part. She has proven what she says here. As a child, she was a voracious reader, and now as an adult, she is a highly productive writer. She read during night, and now she writes during the nights. Fadima also compares the day with the night to show how distracting the day may be. She uses a metaphor here. She compares daytime disturbance with sirens, which means a winged feminine creature whose singing lured unwary sailors onto rocks. This makes emotional appeal. Now she tells how to avoid such disturbances. She brings a humorous example of John McAfee, an American writer who is regarded as a pioneer of creative nonfiction. Then after Fadiman brings another literary authority, that of Friedrich Schiller, who was a German poet, philosopher, physician, historian, and playwright, who, as Fadiman tells us, inhaled the stinking smell of rotten apples to heighten his concentration on his study. Both of these two examples are humorous and make emotional appeal. Fadiman tells that she does not have to do any of such crazy things in order to stay awake during the night. Paragraph 18. Something amazing happens when the rest of the world is sleeping. She writes, I am glued to my chair. I forget that I ever wanted to do anything but write. So, what does she do at night? She writes. The crowded city, the crowded apartment, the crowded calendar suddenly seems spacious. 3 or 4 hours pass in a moment. I have no idea what time it is because I never check the clock. If I chose to listen, I could hear the swish of taxis bound for downtown bars or the soft saxophone rips that drift from the neighbor's window. But nothing gets through. I am suspended in a sensory deprivation tank, and the very lack of suspension sensation is delicious. See the metaphor of deprivation tank. So, in paragraph 18, Fadiman portrays some visual images like the image of the crowded city, the crowded apartment, the crowded calendar. Fadiman also portrays some auditory images like that of the swish of taxis, the soft saxophone riffs. Toward the end of paragraph 18, Fadiman uses a remarkable metaphor. She writes about a sensory deprivation tank. This seems to be a crazy fantasy. Probably she is comparing her study room with all windows and doors tightly closed with a tank that is watertight closed. The visual and auditory images, as well as this humorous metaphor, make emotional appeal. With these images and metaphors, she is also arguing that a writer needs completely peaceful environment to work. Paragraph 19. A few years ago, she writes, I was inching along with excruciating slowness on a book I was trying to write. It was clear. See the narrative mode here. Here you see not description, you see narration here. Often you have description in this essay, but there is narration. A few years ago, I was inching along with excruciating slowness on a book I was trying to write. It was clear that the only way I would finish this book was by surrendering unconditionally to my owl self. For several months, I worked all night, ate breakfast with my family, and slept from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The pages piled up as speedily as the tailor of Gloucester's piecework. Again, see the simile comparison. She is comparing her writing with tailor's shaving cloth. The only problem was that even though my husband and I inhabited the same zip code, he was living on New York time and I had apparently moved to Auckland time. New Zealand is 18 hours ahead of New York. At New York, Sunday, 19:20 a.m. Auckland, Monday, 13:20 p.m. Kathmandu, Monday, 6 a.m. I noted down. So what is she telling? She's saying that she shared the same bed with the husband, but they never met. The jet lag, see the metaphor. The jet lag on weekends was terrible. So in paragraph 19, the writer changes her mode of writing from description to narration. Fadiman narrates one of her personal experiences of writing a book. She uses this example from her personal experience to argue that writing can go smoothly only at night. She uses a kinesthetic image inching along with excruciating slowness in the first sentence of paragraph 19. In the fourth sentence of paragraph 19, the writer creates another remarkable figure of speech. She compares the pages of her writing with a tailor's piecework. This comparison seems to be far-fetched and gains the effect of a metaphysical conceit where a poet brings together two seemingly irreconcilable ideas to make a point. In the fifth sentence, Fadiman creates yet another metaphor of a zip code. In the last sentence, Fadiman creates the metaphor of the jet lag to talk about the difficulty caused by opposite routines of her and husband who are active during night and day. Thus, this paragraph is remarkable for metaphors. It makes logical appeal as well as emotional appeal. Let's read paragraph 20. She writes, I finished the book and promised I would never do it again, except for occasional binges of 3 or 4 nights, just long enough to write an essay. I have kept my word. I am even more attached to George than I am to my circadian rhythm, so the trade off has been worth it. And unlike most recovering alcoholics, I seem to be able to indulge in a bender now and then without permanently falling off the wagon. So in paragraph 20, like the previous paragraph 19, paragraph 20 is also in narrative mode. In this paragraph, Fadiman uses another metaphor of an alcoholic to talk about her intoxicating indulgence in writing. She compares writing with drinking alcohol. Paragraph 21. It is now 3:42 a.m. in the morning. Everyone here has been asleep for hours except my daughter's hamster, the mouse, the other nocturnal mammal in the family, who is busy carrying sunflower seeds from one end of the is his terrarium to the other. After Silky is the name of the mice. After Silky completes this task, he will change his mind and bring the seeds back again. I will do more or less the same. So she compares herself with the mouse. The mouse is bringing sheets back and forth, and Fadiman is bringing paragraphs back and forth as revision. Look at the beautiful analogy between the writer and the mouse. I will do more or less the same thing that the mouse is doing with several paragraphs. The meaning is I'll revise my paragraphs. Then, when the light breaks over Houston Street and the pigeons begin to coo on the window ledge, Silky and I will retire. And so, by faster and faster degrees, wrote Dickens at the end of his long night walk, until the last degrees were very fast. The day came, and I was tired and could sleep. So Dickens also wrote throughout night. Lamb wrote throughout night. Milton read throughout night. Oh God, look, she brought dozens of literary examples of owls. And then she writes, good night. So let's comment paragraph 21. In paragraph 21, Fadiman switches back to descriptive mode from narration in present simple tense and makes a humorous analogy between her act of writing and revising and the activity of the nocturnal mammal hamster. This is a humorous but illuminating comparison between the writer and the mouse. The hamster, named Silky, carries sunflower seeds from one end of his glass house to another end, and Fadiman also moves her paragraphs back and forth while revising her draft of the essay. Fadiman ends her interesting essay with a quotation from a literary critic, Charles Dickens. She ends her essay with a curious greeting. It is 3:42 and in the morning, but she parts from her readers with a good night. Look, it's good morning. And she says good night. So I don't know how long time I took. Maybe I took more than 2 hours. And I read these 21 paragraphs with 2 pauses and commented. Now, dear student, if you watch my video till this point, your assignment is write an essay making the rhetorical analysis of Fadiman's essay Night Owl, taking help of this content that I created. Thank you so much. Now I will read the next essay, The More Room. So I stop here. I'm tired. I'm suffering from diarrhea and taking medicine. Thank you for watching my video. I made this video just like an hour. It's almost 10 o'clock. Thank you once again for watching. Now write the essay with the help of my video.